What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Pats podcast. I'm Phil Perry. The horns are blaring, yes, even though the Patriots lost. Why? Well, because they blare every week. But also because it looks like Patriots fans, you have a quarterback. That's what Miami Dolphins Hall of Fame pass rusher told me right after the game on the Gillette Stadium turf. His eyes got about as wide as saucers when I asked him about Mac Jones. He said, man, he took some shots tonight, but they have a quarterback. The way he could identify the blitz, the way he could change protections, the way he could throw accurately under duress. He checked a lot of boxes on Sunday afternoon, even though the Patriots didn't win. So let's dive a little deeper into that Mac Jones performance, shall we? We have Mark Schofield of USA Today and the Touchdown Wire on with us. He studies these quarterbacks so closely that he's going to be able to share some insight with you that you haven't gotten anywhere else. We're also going to be talking to Logan Paulsen, 10 years in the league playing tight end. We understand this is going to be a tight end centric offense now. So what did we see from the Patriots in week one as far as how they use their tight ends and what could they do a little bit better moving forward based on some of the film that we've watched since that game against the Dolphins has come and gone. First, though, let's get right to Mark Schofield. Let's hear what he has to say about Mac Jones. And then you're going to hear who he feels has the brighter NFL future, Mac Jones or Mac Jones and the Patriots' week 2 opponent, Zach Wilson. Very happy now to have our good buddy, Mark Schofield, USA Today, the Touchdown Wire. He is quarterbacking guru extraordinaire is what I call him. Mark, thanks for joining the program.
Bill, it's an absolute honor to be here, even though you're selling me, though. I don't know about quarterback guru extraordinaire. I mean, quarterback guru, okay guy. I mean, is that a good phrase?
Well, I couldn't just leave it at guru because I feel like a lot of people have absorbed that title over the years, whether they're former quarterbacks, NFL guys, coaches. No. You're a level up. Okay?
I'm a level up. I appreciate that, man. But now I got to bring you're putting me on the defensive, and now I got to bring the A game. Like
best of the best.
I can't fake it now. I can't just mail it in. I got to deliver.
Best of the best. That's why we have you on. Well, nobody watches these quarterbacks more closely than you do, whether it's before the draft, right after the draft, trying to figure out offensive scheme fits. And now that we're in the regular season, you're the guy. So Mac Jones, one start in. We know how closely you follow this particular football team, Mark. What'd you think?
I mean, can we fit him for a gold jacket now? Maybe not. I mean, we could, but no, Phil, honestly, I was very impressed with Mac Jones from Sunday. And I know there's been a lot of discussion, was he checking the ball down too much? Was he being aggressive enough? And I think, watching that game live, rewatching it a couple of times, there weren't a ton of opportunities for him to really take some chances downfield. There might've been a play here or there, but this was a Miami defense, a Miami secondary that I think did a very good job covering concepts, a very good job at disguising things at times. And Mac Jones, to his credit, either ruled out routes either before the play or after the play based on the coverage, based on the look, or took what the defense gave him or made adjustments. I mean, you just wrote about, the Hunter Henry zero blitz look where he sort of checked, made the hand signal, got it to Hunter Henry to beat that look, did a couple of other things in this game that I thought were very impressive. He had the sort of vertical route hole shot to Nelson Aguilar where they ran that go and the flat from the inside receiver there to cover too high look. Mac Jones sort of pumped the football, gets that cornerback to bite down on the flat route, gets him to commit, and then he throws the whole shot after a quick reset, puts it to the outside so Aguilar can catch and shield the football away from the safety rotating over. That was a very impressive throw. You also had a throw where you had that sort of seam splitter from Aguilar beating the too high look. Jones shows the football, gets the linebacker to turn away from Aguilar and then throws it to Aguilar over his head. Those are some sort of savvy type plays you expect veterans to make, not a rookie making his first NFL start. So on the whole, very impressive. I think, the way I sort of think about this game, just generally big picture, is if you would have told me, look, you've told me Friday morning, Patriots going to have the football with about 3 minutes to go, down 1 at the plus 11, chance to win the game. How would you feel about Mac Jones? I would have said, look, you probably played great. Like if that's the situation they're going to find themselves in, that's the situation they found themselves in. He put them in a position to win that game, certainly didn't do anything to cause them to lose that game. And I think now that the dust has settled from start number 1, you have to be pretty impressed with what you saw.
You mentioned so many of the little subtle aspects of playing the position that I know you really appreciate. that I think we all feel like Mac Jones is really going to have to excel in to be a good NFL quarterback, because he's not the dynamic athlete that some of these other young guys across the league are. Let me ask you this though, Mark, when it comes to the decision-making, because one of the things now that we're multiple days removed from the game that we're starting to dig a little deeper into, and you hit on it early, but it just felt as though, especially when you look at, say, the average depth of target, right? It's low. It's, I think, 6.5 yards. He had the football out very quickly, 2.39 seconds on average, according to PFF. Did he leave some meat on the bone, in your opinion, in terms of maybe testing things a little bit further down the field? Or was it just the Dolphins are blitzing like crazy here, and we just lost our right tackle? I don't feel like holding the football for 4.5 seconds behind the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more the latter, Phil, than the former. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, after that game got done, I had a lot of people saying, text, DMs, like, was Jones just a check down Charlie? Was he just, way too conservative? And watching it live, when you've got the broadcast angle, sometimes you think, well, there's got to be something open downfield, right? He's looking downfield. Like, did he just... And then you see it on the all 22. There might have been a play here or there where football's on left hash. He's got a go route on the opposite sideline, and maybe he could take that chance, right? Receivers like step for step with the defender, but he's got the outside position. Maybe he should take a chance to drop that over the top. But those were few and far between. And if you want to say, like, after the game, you want to grade him out and say, look, you've got this shot, you can make that throw, go get it. Okay, maybe you could do that, but it wasn't like situations, Phil, where you've got post routes running open in the middle of the field that he's just looking at and saying, nah, I don't trust that. Or he's got a corner route open over the top on a smash concept, that corner's playing down. And he's just like, no, I'm not feeling that. He was under pressure. They, like you said, they were blitzing him on a ton. You have right tackle going down. And so you're trying to get the ball out, protect yourself, not make a turnover. And let's face it, when we saw the Patriots draft Mac Jones, the thought was it's going to be like the Brady offense, right? It's going to be quick strike, get the ball out of his hands, maximize yardage after the catch. That's kind of the philosophy going into it. Last year with Cam Newton, it was more vertical stuff, right? The run game was going to be run first. You're going to try to shot plays downfield. But now this is what they want to see from Mac Jones. They want to see him get the ball out quickly, be that point guard, distributor type of quarterback. Yes, he could take some shot plays downfield. And I think there were some lessons to learn from a couple of incompletions that he had. But by and large, I think this is what the offense is going to look like. They're going to have him be a distributor, get the ball out quickly, let these guys make plays after the catch, like we sort of saw at the start of the Tom Brady run, right? I bet if you look back at Tom Brady's average depth of target in, say, 2003, 2002, it was probably around 6.5. I mean, that's the way the offense was constructed. As we go along, we want to see him push the ball downfield more when the opportunities present themselves. But for week one, and given the context of the defense, I'm quite all right with what we saw.
Yeah, and I wonder too, right? You get Trent Brown back, the offensive line as a whole plays a little bit better. You're going against a defense that maybe doesn't blitz as much. Maybe there's just more opportunities, because in training camp, he was not a guy that was unwilling to throw the ball deep. You even saw it in preseason, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's
comes in against Washington,
Wilkerson or whoever.
Wilkerson, he's taking the deep shots over the top. And, when we were talking about Mac Jones after they drafted him, you watch him at Alabama. And when they went play action, he was going deep. Like, he's a good deep ball passer with touch, with the ability to make some bucket throws. So he has the ability, the willingness, the aggression to throw downfield. The opportunities just weren't there in large part on Sunday. The Dolphins are a very good defense, and they do a lot of stuff to confuse quarterbacks, particularly young quarterbacks. Like, look what Brian Flores did to Justin Herbert last year, or to Jared Goff last year. I mean, Brian Flores has constructed a defense that makes life tough on quarterbacks of all skill sets, particularly younger quarterbacks. And when you give it that context, I think you have to be impressed with what you saw from Jones.
You mentioned our conversation right after the draft, right? Where we're talking about, okay, the Patriots might have to, tweak their offense a little bit, because listen, this is a coaching staff that always has said, we're going to try to put our players in the best possible positions to succeed. So if you weren't willing to mold yourselves to Mac Jones, you'd be doing it wrong. In all likelihood, right? So did you see any signs of that? I know it's just one game, Mark, but I remember some of the concepts you're talking about, like mesh, right? And that's a play that the Patriots have used before, but did you see any little signs of tweakage from Josh McDaniels.
You saw some little signs, some sort of layered concepts, some stuff where, you're giving him some college concepts like that go flat that I talked about earlier with Nelson Aguilar. You saw that sort of safety splitter, that seam and go route that Aguilar ran as well that I mentioned against that Tampa 2 look. So you saw some little things in the playbook that, if you've read their playbooks from 16 from previous years, like you might say, oh, I don't quite remember that one. McDaniels has certainly done some things that are a little bit new, but it was also a lot of the stuff we've seen from the Patriots in the past. A lot of that emphasis on yardage after the catch, a lot of the emphasis on quick throws, and I think as we go on, the curious thing to watch will be, do they do more of the tweakage? Do they do more of suddenly we're running a ton of mesh? When we go play action, we're going over the top. When we do more with the RPO game like Jones ran at Alabama? Or is it a situation where they feel like, look, he can handle whatever we put in front of him, so we could just run what we want to run? That might vary week to week based on the personnel, the defense, the matchups that we're going up against, that we're going to get in passing game. So that's going to be something curious to track. It's hard to say, look at 1 week, 1 game and say, this is what the offense is definitively going to look like. I think it will change over the time. And as you know, Phil, this is an offensive staff that they will change the game plan from week to week based on who they're going up against. So what we saw against Miami, it might be wildly different this Sunday against the Jets.
You're going to see a lot of zone defense, I would imagine, against the Jets and Robert Saleh. You saw a lot of man-to-man, although the Dolphins did a pretty good job of mixing in some zone as well, which was a little bit of a wrinkle, it looked like, for Brian Flores and Josh Boyer there. I do have to ask you about the Jets and their quarterback, Mark. Did he perform as well as some of the numbers would lead us to believe? For instance, the yards per attempt was up over 7 and looked like it was pretty robust. But then I saw some numbers against the blitz that were pretty abysmal. I think he was 3 for 11 against the blitz in Carolina on week 1. So what was your number one takeaway from Zach Wilson's first performance for the Jets?
I think it was a bit of a mixed bag. They got down. He had to make some throws late. They were playing against some soft coverages, cover 2, cover 4 down the stretch with using tempo. And so he had some opportunities for some big plays. He had to play Denzel Mims on that same sort of go flat concept where you got a little bit of pressure and maybe you'd like to see him handle the pocket a little bit better. So slide and step around, but he wildly climbs the pocket and makes this ridiculous sidearm throw. And it went for a huge gain. And it's like, okay, the result is fantastic. The throw is insane. But ideally you don't need to sort of make that move and expose yourself and take an absolute shot the way he did. But he was in that moment, end game situation, he's just trying to make a big play. And so you had some big plays at the end. He did some things, though, that I thought were really impressive. He had a throw early in the game where he's reading sort of a curl flat concept to the right, doesn't like the look. It's a zone coverage that he resets his feet to the middle of the field to throw Corey Davis on a dig route on time, in rhythm, get into his third read with fluid footwork in the pocket. I thought that was a really nice play. He was maybe a half a second late with it because the defender almost jumped it, but it went for a huge gain. He had another throw on an in cut, like post route to Davis off of play action, deep drop, again, sort of on time, in rhythm. He looks comfortable in this offense. And I think that's probably my biggest takeaway, is that he looks very comfortable and seems to have a good command of this offense. It wasn't a situation where I thought, man, he looks lost, even with the interception he threw. It wasn't like I'm thinking that this game is too much for him right now. He looks comfortable. I do think there are opportunities to pressure him, to blitz him, to get some of those numbers, duplicate some of those numbers you just mentioned, 3 of 11 against the blitz. You have Mekhi Becton go down. Elijah Vera Tucker had some moments where he gave up some pressures. I think New England's front, particularly the front 7, they're going to be able to get pressure on Wilson, get him off the spot, make him make some difficult reads and throws under duress. If he's comfortable back there, he can make some throws. But I think this is a game where the pressure might be able to make him uncomfortable, force him into some tough decisions, and maybe duplicate some of those numbers you saw against the blitz.
Can't wait to see what Bill Belichick has in store for Zach Wilson. I can't wait to hear what you say in response to this question that I'm going to lay on you right now. This is the money question. This is the final question of the exchange here for you and I today. I wish we could go longer. Every time I talk to you, I feel like I learned so much about this game, and I'm sure our listeners do as well. Here's the money question, though, Mark. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
Who has the brighter NFL future, Mac Jones or Zach Wilson?
I'm comfortable saying Mac Jones. Mostly because we have seen how they're going to use him. We have seen a knowledge and an understanding of this offense, similar to what I was just saying about Zach Wilson. Mac Jones seems incredibly comfortable in this offense. He seems to have a good command of it. And it's interesting, hearing the discussions about how New England involves their quarterbacks in protections. I think that's an important thing for quarterbacks to be able to do. We saw, for example, the reason why I think Justin Fields is not your starting quarterback in Chicago right now is because of the play we all saw against Buffalo, where they couldn't sort the protections out and he gets earholed on a blitz that everybody saw coming. Mac Jones has that deep sort of knowledge and understanding of protections. It's something we talked about when we talked about him when they drafted him. It's something you saw in film in Alabama. He knows their strengths, their weaknesses, when he has to sort of bail and get away from pressure because they got a blitz coming that he knows they can't get blocked up. I think he'll need to learn, he's not throwing against Missouri to Jalen Waddle and Devonta Smith. When he had Jacoby Myers on that post route in the first half of the game and he put air under it, it gave Jason McCourty, our old friend, time to break on it and make a play. Jacoby Myers is a fantastic wide receiver. I think the world of him. He's not Jalen Waddle. He's not going to be able to race away from an NFL defensive back, with the window that he had of separation. And so there are things that Mac Jones will learn from this game. But I do think he has an extremely bright future. I think Wilson is going to be a good quarterback. But as we've seen over the years, Mike LaFleur might be a great offensive coordinator, but we don't have the track record of putting his players in position to be successful. I think they've done a good start with it, but we know Josh McDaniels, this offensive staff, has done a very good job over the years of putting their players in position to be successful. That plus what we've seen from Mac already makes me very excited about his future.
I think you just made a lot of Patriots fans very excited, Mark.
Well, I'm excited because now I get to go home. I get to go home back to the Boston area for the holidays if I want to. Because if I had said Zach Wilson, Phil, I could not, announce any travel plans. I could not say I'm coming home for the holidays. Terminal B would be packed with mad Patriots fans the second my plane landed. So I got to think ahead. But no, in all honesty, smart. Mac Jones looked fantastic. I'm extremely excited about his future. I know, look, I was very excited about the Justin Fields possibility. I was a huge fan of Justin Fields and some other quarterbacks in this draft. But Mac Jones right now might have landed in the ideal spot. He looked great on week one. You get Brian Baldinger talking about how great he looked. You get people smarter than me talking about how great he looked. I think Patriots fans should be really excited. We may have lost a 1-point game, but they have the quarterback of the future, it looks like.
Nobody smarter than Mark Schofield. How dare you say that about my good friend Mark Schofield? Mark Schofield, USA Today, Touchdown Wire. Thanks so much for being with us, man. You always bring the knowledge, the quarterbacking wisdom. We love it. Thanks again.
Thanks so much, buddy. Always a blast to catch up with you, my friend.
Thanks so much to Mark Schofield. Of course, you can find him on Twitter at Mark Schofield. That's SCHOFIELD. You can also find his writing on the Football Wire. You can find his podcasts on Pat's Pulpit, Bleeding Green Nation. The guy is everywhere. Nobody works harder. So we thank him for spending some time with us today. We also very excited about Logan Paulsen. As I mentioned off the top, 10 years in the league, played for a variety of different teams, played in a variety of different offenses, including two that I think you will find interesting when it comes to his background. He's a Kyle Shanahan guy. Played for Shanahan in Washington, played for Shanahan in San Francisco. He also spent some time under Bill O'Brien, essentially learning this Patriots offense. We get into that, how difficult it is to pick the offense up. He makes a great point about the Patriots offense that I'd never heard before. And the guy's never even played for the Patriots. But because he's played on so many other different teams and some other different schemes, it gave him some perspective in terms of why it might be difficult for new players, tight ends or not, to pick up this Patriots offense. So you're going to want to stick around for that, but got a chance to watch a handful of plays where the Patriots used their 12 personnel package, Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith on the field at the same time. And he tells us what worked, what didn't, what he might expect from this offense moving forward. Let's get to Logan right now. Very excited for our next Pat's guest here. It's Logan Paulsen, 10 years in the NFL, Washington football team, Houston Texans, Atlanta Falcons, San Francisco 49ers, Chicago Bears. You can follow him, as I do, at Logan_Paulsen. That's PAULSEN 82 on Instagram, and you're going to learn yourself a ton about football and a ton about specifically the tight end position, because that's where this man could be found for 10 years in the league. Logan, thanks for being with us, man.
Guys, thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
No doubt. Well, we had to get you on because this is sort of a new era of Patriots football. And of course, we're very focused on the quarterback position here with Mac Jones, but it's also a new era in that they spent a whole lot of money on Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry. And
Right.
A lot of us were sort of wondering, okay, how will the offense look now with those two players all of a sudden dropped in? And of course, we're used to seeing the two tight end offense with Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez back in the day, but these two guys are different guys. They don't have the same sorts of skill sets. So I wanted to put it to you first, Logan. When you saw that those two players had signed in New England, what went through your head and what did you envision for this offense?
Yeah, so Jonnu is honestly one of my favorite guys to watch. I think he's got a really unique skill set, and then he's like very physical and very strong, has like a nice technical acumen for blocking in the run game, but he's also one of those guys who kind of runs like a running back, catches the ball really nicely. He's not the best natural pass catcher, but he's got this tremendous physical skill set, like height, weight, speed type of guy that you really kind of love. And he plays with a great physicality. And I love the way they used him in Tennessee, getting him on some like screens underneath, crossing routes, letting him use his tremendous athleticism after the catch. And then Hunter Henry's a guy that I really liked coming out of college when I did his evaluation. I thought he was just kind of a solid, I think the second round pick, the value there, that when he was taken by the San Diego Chargers was of good value. And then he's kind of had some injury history. I'm biased in the sense that I really like my tight ends to be physical in the run game. That's not really his cup of tea. He's not quite there, but he does what he has to do in that capacity. And he's an above average receiver, for a guy who's okay in the run game. So I think they made some really nice value adds there in terms of the position. I wonder if they overpaid a little bit. You know what I mean? Because I think they're good players. I don't know if they're great players, but I think they're really good football players. And I think they add something special to this offense.
Well, and Logan, one of the reasons it's great to have you on with us is because, of the offenses in which you played. You played for Kyle Shanahan, and we know, what his offense now looks like in San Francisco. A lot of two backs, two tight ends, sort of these regular, heavier personnel groupings. And the Patriots have the ability to do that now. Do you feel like there are certain elements of the Josh McDaniels offense that they can now highlight just by running these two guys on the field? When you were in those offenses, what did you guys feel like really gave you an advantage when you could put two tight ends on the field?
So I think one of the things about having two tight ends, especially two tight ends who have the ability to catch the football and create mismatches, is you can dictate personnel to the defense in a really nice way. So what I mean by that is when you kind of trot out your fullback, your two tight ends, the defense has to match in base, which usually means you're bringing on run defenders as opposed to coverage players, right? And so if you kind of could dictate that personnel matchup, like New England's always done a very nice job of this because, they do play with a fullback. They do play with a lot of tight ends, when Rob Gronkowski was there specifically. And then you could get Rob Gronkowski on a guy on like a second or third linebacker, a guy who's not out there to be as a coverage player. He's out there to fit the run. And so that, I don't care by any kind of metric, that's a mismatch. And so if you get that same type of response with these two players, Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, I think that's tremendously advantageous because you're getting better athletes on poor coverage players while also being able to establish the run in a physical manner. So I think that's the advantage of having two tight ends who have the skill set that these two guys have. And what I mean by that is like I said, Hunter Henry's not an elite blocker, but he's okay. And Jonnu, in my mind, is maybe like a top 7 blocker in the NFL. He's very, very skilled at it. So you bring those two guys on the field and you can't match nickel the same way you can match some other tight ends. Like when I was in Washington, like I'd come on the field, Jordan Reed would come on, they'd treat Jordan like a wide receiver, they'd match at nickel or they'd match at dime. You can't do that with these guys because of how proficient they are in the run game. I think that's tremendously advantageous.
So I have a few plays here queued up, Logan. I know you've watched this Patriots game too, but I have a few queued up where just trying to figure out, okay, what is this thing actually going to look like? And the first one, we'll start with the passing game. Okay, so you can see the formation that they have here where you've got both these guys on the field. You got sort of like a 3-by-1 set, I guess you would call it, and Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith sort of on opposite ends of the line of scrimmage here. And I think what you're going to get is basically Henry and Smith running crossers. Is there anything from the defensive look that you see here that would suggest that this would be a good sort of play for Mac Jones and the Patriots to run here?
So kind of interesting, you get man-to-man coverage here. You got all these guys topped up on each other. And they're matching in a kind of what was popularized in my mind, and I'm sure New England does this a little bit too, but keeping kind of their base structure of the defense. So they've got these three guys covered up inside. You see that, the guard, the center, the tackle. Then they got these stand-up linebackers. They have their middle linebacker right here in the formation. That's a backer. And then everybody else in the field is a DB. So they've kind of got this rush kind of dominant look here, and then they're going to get man-to-man coverage. And anytime you get man-to-man coverage, crossing routes are fantastic, right? Because you get guys running into each other, you get guys running through traffic. And so if you can kind of get this play called against the right coverage and then protect this, because one of the advantages of getting 5 rushers on the field at the same time is they're all in one-on-one matchups. So it's a short developing route. It's like right near the line of scrimmage, right? Get some foot traffic and hopefully get an easy throw and catch here for your guy, Jones, as a quarterback.
Yeah, so it's sort of interesting. It was maybe the throw relatively easy. He ends up taking a shot here. He got walloped on this play, but he does find Hunter Henry sort of streaking across the field, and it's a safety and coverage. So they're matching him with a defensive back, and he's still able to win one-on-one.
Yeah, so I think that's interesting too, right? Because I thought they were closer line of scrimmage crossers, but they basically ran like a crosser by Jonnu, which is like a 5-yard crossing route, and then they run basically a high cross by Hunter Henry. And so one of the things that you like by Jones here is that he understands it's man coverage, and he understands that the bottom half of this field over here is going to be wide open because all the coverage is going to kind of bleed out with Johnny. You see 21 run across the field there. He knows there's a tremendous window open over to the left side of the hash. So that means he can put the ball out. He's probably throwing this ball before the receiver actually makes his break, and he can throw the receiver open because he knows that left side of the field, as he's looking at it, is going to be wide open because of the coverage.
Yeah, he does a pretty good job of that. Bill Belichick loves to see anticipation in his quarterbacks. I remember asking him about Josh Allen, of all people, last year and the importance of accuracy and can accuracy be improved? And he actually changed what had really been a staple sort of credo for him in the passing game for quarterbacks, which was accuracy, decision-making. Two most important things for a quarterback: accuracy and decision-making, accuracy and decision-making. He sort of changed it last year when he was asked about Josh Allen. He said, it really, for me, it's anticipation in decision-making. And it feels like Mac Jones kind of has all three here. Logan, I wanted to show you another play here where we flip it over to the run game. And they had a wildly successful first play of the game where it's 12 personnel and we're all sitting there up in the press box and saying, okay, this is what this offense is supposed to be, right? They run the 2 tight ends out there. Of course they do, because they just paid them all this money and they're in line. They're nice and tight to the formation here. And they're just going to run it right at them. And you mentioned Hunter Henry, probably not a quote unquote people mover all his own, but he gets some help here from Jonnu Smith. Is this probably the best way to use him in the run game, is to give him help with somebody else, whether it's another tight end or a tackle here? I'll play the play here now. So he's doubling the outside linebacker. It looks like there with Jonnu Smith.
This play is called Zap. Some people call it Zap. Some people call it Boss, whatever you want to call it. And basically what you're getting, it's a really good play to run against like a 34 structure, right? So like they got our Sam linebacker on the ball, which is this 47 or whatever number this player is for the Dolphins right here. So basically what that allows you to do is get a nice double team by the 2 tight ends to the secondary support player, right? And I don't know if that's 25 or they rotate to it late, but as a blocker, like those edge guys are big. They're big men. They're like defensive linemen. They're good athletes. They're physical. So it's kind of a mismatch for a tight end to be one-on-one in that situation. Even a guy like Jonnu, he can do it, and I've seen him do it, and he's pretty good at it. But ideally, you want to get multiple hands on a guy of that size, So I think this is great, and I think this is pretty good by Hunter Henry here, right? Because he knows he's got help inside, attack the outside number, post it up, let Jonnu get some rib meat there, and then basically what you're allowing this to do here is just allowing the back the opportunity to stretch to the play side if he needs to, and then make a cut. The angle of the back's a little bit tighter here. It's like the outside leg of the guard. So this is like, instead of outside zone, it's probably more inside zone angle here, which is kind of something that traditionally New England has done. But you love the movement they get on the double team, and you love the blocking by the O-line just in general, how they're getting to the second level. They're covering people up. And then great job by 16 here. Oh, my goodness. You love when a receiver gets in there and sticks his face on a guy. Yeah,
Jacoby Myers, that's a former quarterback too. NC State quarterback Jacoby Myers, not afraid to mix it up in there. Those guys know, it's basically no block, no ball You know, so that, you know, or no snaps is probably an even more, you know, definitive way of saying that. You're not going to be on the field if you're not blocking for Bill Belichick. Now, I want to stick with the run game, Logan, because we did see, I think, some issues pop up late. And I don't know if it's just fatigue or if it's just asking these guys to do a little bit too much.
Right.
But, you know, we're going to see a crack toss play here, which is sort of a staple for the Patriots. And it really was with the playbook sort of dialed back, and it just clearly was, obviously, from the Tom Brady area. It had to be, of course. But this crack toss play was one of their favorites, and I think I have it here now. But it's Jonnu Smith who is it looks like the crack guy, and they end up not blocking it real well. It ends up with a pretty good gain. But you tell me, I'd love to get your take on this. You know, is this asking too much? Because that's Adam Butler, who's a former Patriots defensive tackle, who's sort of over the guard there, and that's going to be the guy that Jonnu has to try to block. Is that, you mentioned he's a good blocker, but is that too much to block a D tackle that way?
Yeah, just let it run for a second, then we can talk about it, please. Thank you. When you run this crack toss play, ideally you'd like a guy, like I think what they're expecting here, this big guy, would you say Butler is his name?
Yeah, Butler.
He's actually lined up, looks like on the outside shoulder of the guard, and usually in a 34 structure. So they're basically playing like a jam front here, which means that you got a 3 technique by Butler, you got a nose guard, then you got a 3 technique on the other side. It's a very condensed, packed up front. And running a crack toss to this formation is not great because this outside linebacker, number 40, whatever he is, he's going to line up. He's going to line up outside of the tight end. So really, there's nobody here for the tight end to crack, and for him to go 2 gaps down, so he's skipping basically the C gap, going all the way to the B gap to crack this defensive lineman here. That's challenging, right? So basically, what's happening is the guard here, the guard to the left side of the formation, should reach this, right? The tackle should pull, and really the crack should be happening on the Sam linebacker. But because of the structure, it's the first game of the year. You get this kind of stuff all the time because you haven't really prepped for it, right? You don't really know what the defense is going to do. He's got to go way down here to crack this guy. So this really isn't his guy. He's just kind of helping out 71 here. And because 71's pushing out and Jonnu's pushing in, you end up kind of with like opposite forces. And I guarantee you 71 is a little bit bigger than Jonnu Smith, right? So it's going to slide out. And so, you know, great job by 76 here, kind of digging it out. But this is ideally kind of what you want to have happen. You want someone to make a wall here, Jonnu Smith in this case. And it's not a great wall. It's kind of a bloody wall because he's blocking 2 people. He's blocking his guy and the defender. But it's enough to kind of get the guy on the edge. And again, you got to point at the receivers, right? The receivers do a great job of can you rewind the play for a second?
Yeah, sure. And Hunter Henry this is another 12 personnel play. So Hunter Henry's actually out wide.
Oh, is that
this?
Right there?
And he's getting up to get the cornerback on the play side here. Yeah,
I love that. And I love that he's not, let's see what he does here. I know that he's not blocking the corner. His eyes are to the safety, right? It's called a push crack. So you push up on the defender that's got you in man-to-man coverage and then crack the safety as they come down, right? And so what that does is it essentially allows you to take 2 people with 1 guy, right? The DB thinks he's got you in man-to-man coverage. Your eyes are on the safety, and then you crack down, block the safety. He goes with you for a second. C21's hesitation right here. You got to love that. And then it just gives this back enough time to get to the perimeter, you know, on a kind of a good technique. So I'd say, you know, it doesn't look pretty by Jonnu, but that's a little bit of game plan, right? A little bit of him just trying to make a good block. And then great job by Hunter Henry there, kind of knowing his assignment and making an excellent block there.
This is why we have you on, Logan, because I saw this play and I said, man, good job by Damian Harris. It looks like the Dolphins defense is 4 yards in the backfield and he turns it into an 8-yard gain. But in reality, Jonnu Smith made the best of a bad situation there. And Hunter Henry essentially took care of 2 guys by himself on the outside. Right. So that's a positive play. And again, just the perfect one for us to have you on for. I have one more, and it was the play of the game. Unfortunately for the Patriots, it was the Damian Harris fumble. And again here, maybe this is not asking them to do too much, but I believe you're going to see Jonnu Smith trying to, or it may be Hunter Henry this time, trying to block Adam Butler again. So Adam Butler, old friend Adam Butler,
friend of the show,
ends up. All right, so we've got this look again here, Logan, where both tight ends are in line, really tight to the formation here. Jacoby Myers is right there with them as well, and they're trying to basically bleed clock here. I mean, they're in position to kick a game-winning field goal, but they're just trying to run the thing until the game is over, essentially. And it doesn't go all that well for them. And I'm wondering if the tight end blocking here had anything to do with not the fumble itself, because that was
Right.
pretty much a one-on-one play, but just seemed to be a lot of traffic near the line of scrimmage. So I'll play it out for you here. It does end up being Henry on Butler.
Yeah.
And it's Jonnu Smith on the outside linebacker here, I think is Baker.
Right. So it looks like they're in a 55 front here. So basically a 55 front is like a 3 technique. So that would be the guy over the outside shoulder of the guard. Then they got a 5 technique who's outside shoulder of the tackle. And usually you wouldn't get this kind of structure. So you'd be calling this to get Henry in a double team here with the tackle. But because of the front here, the guard and the tackle have to double team the 3 technique, right? And so Hunter Henry, who's like, a good blocker, but not a great blocker, is now in a one-on-one with a big, strong man here, right? And that being said, I think he does a good job of kind of denying penetration here, like washing this down. And I think I was like, why would you switch Jonnu and Henry here? You know what I mean? See how he kind of keeps the big fella on the line of scrimmage here? Mm-hmm. Like, that's a win for a tight end. Now, he could be better with his outside hand here and kind of keep this inside if you watch the big fella slides off here at the very end. But what I think is going to happen here is you put Jonnu outside because you expect Jonnu to be in a one-on-one and you expect Hunter to be in a double team, right? And that's not how it happened because of the front that they dictated. And you're right, it gets muddy. And in 4-minute situations when you're trying to bleed the clock, this stuff is terrible, right? Because everyone knows it's a run. You get these really unusual formations that you're not used to running runs into. And this kind of murky look comes up, right? Because everyone in the stadium, I'm at home, you're at home, what's going to happen. They know what's going to happen. And they play accordingly, right? It's like they're playing 9-on-7, right? Or team run. Like, they know it's going to be a run. They trigger really hard. It gets really gross in here really quick. I think they did an okay job. I think Hunter Henry could have finished a little bit better. But yeah, it's going to be gross kind of no matter what here.
And a gross finish where you've got the fumble. And
is that how the game ended right there?
Almost. I mean, they did have a chance to get it back. So they recovered that fumble and they're into their 4-minute offense, then going the other way. Yeah. And the Patriots really just couldn't stop them. They completed one long pass from sort of the shadow of their own end zone. And that was essentially the game.
Oh my gosh.
I know. Tough one. But, but again, it's just great for us to hear, okay, how did this work? We understand Damian Harris fumbled. Actually, really good play by the corner who really didn't punch the ball out. It looked like he ripped Harris's hand off the football. And so just wanted to see, okay, how much, with all this traffic there around the play at the time that the fumble happens, how much of that is on these tight ends? But it sounds like, again, it's just sort of a tough look where you really can't do all that much about it in real time.
Yeah, and like it's interesting, like you bring the receiver down here, you see how he's standing behind the tight ends, you bring him in to block a safety, right? And that's the guy here with the orange cleats, like with the white sleeve right here. Mm-hmm. And yes, that fella. And so basically the DB knows here that like the corner number 25 knows that the receiver's going to block the safety, so he's going to be free in the fit, and he's going to have to make the tackle here. And so he's an unblocked player, you know what I mean? Like free to kind of make whatever play he wants here because everyone knows it's not going to be a pass. He doesn't have to worry about covering anybody, right? And he knows that, remember we talked about Hunter Henry took 2 guys the first time? He knows it's a run. So he's not going to abide the same kind of respect here on this kind of push crack scenario. Like he's going to fit the run and make the tackle.
And good for him. I've heard coaches say we don't block corners, in certain schemes. And that's Damian Harris on a cornerback. If you're a Patriots fan, you generally probably like that matchup. It just doesn't go his way where he basically, Howard essentially made the tackle and stripped the ball out at the same time. It's pretty impressive. So Logan, this has been phenomenal, learning a ton, watching this here with you. Hopefully, I'm sure they will. The people listening, watching will be learning as well. But the last thing I wanted to ask you just about the position that you played for so long, and we mentioned it off the top, you played for a variety of different teams and you played under, some similar schemes there with Kyle, but I'm sure there were some changes too along the way for you. We have 2 new tight ends here in New England. How long does it take at that position, especially because what we've heard here, even Bill Belichick has said, I think Tom Brady has said in the past, outside of quarterback, tight end might be the hardest position to learn in a new offense because you just have so many responsibilities offensively in the pass game and in the running game as well. So how long should we expect it to take for these 2 guys to really feel like they're getting everything in this offense?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I had the opportunity to play in a whole bunch of different offenses, and one was Bill O'Brien's offense, which is like a derivative of this offense.
Sure.
And I found it somewhat challenging to learn. Like I learned it pretty quick. but it is tough. It's not like the verbiage isn't super intuitive. It's kind of a long lived offense, meaning it's been through many iterations. So like, it's really hard to go back to like the genesis of it and be like, oh, we call it whatever we call it because of this reason, right? Everything's been bastardized and everything's got a secondary rule. And you're like, okay, versus this front, we got to do this, and that front, we got to do this. And it makes it really challenging. And that's a problem with these offenses that have really long lineages, you know, like, because there's all these little finite rules. So I would say of the offenses I had to learn, this was one of the more difficult ones. And you just got to study and like memorize stuff and just be a student of the game. And I don't know how those guys are, Hunter Henry and the other fellow, what's his name?
Jonnu. Yeah.
I always want to call him Judon, but that's not right. That's the linebacker.
Same
right?
team though. Same team.
Yeah, Jonnu. There we go. Thank you. But like, yeah, it depends on how smart. I've played with guys who say they're smart guys, but this is kind of another level of offensive installation. But it looks like from what I've seen here, because like they've got some unusual fronts here, some unusual looks. They were able to handle those pretty well. So I would imagine that they're coming along really nicely. They've had a whole off season, so they probably feel pretty good about it.
That is so interesting. And I've never heard that point made before about offenses that have been around for a while. And you think about it, this offense, you know, essentially you could go all the way back, you know, to Charlie Weiss, and before
Right.
he met with Tom Brady, and you're talking pre-free agency. So you're talking guys that are in the same scheme and the same offense for years on end and never leave. Yeah. And now you've gone through so many years where they say, okay, well, we're going to tweak this because now this is happening across the league, or now that is happening in our division, and we need an adjustment for that. And there's probably all these little branches off of every single concept and every single play. That's got to be one of the reasons why it's so difficult for not just the tight ends, but really for anybody that's new to pick it up. We just hear the stories year after year, Logan.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And that's really well said, right? These long, like the trees, I like that visual, right? The trees and the different veins, like that's what it feels like when you go in. And when you ask a question like, you know, I'm asking my tight end coach or asking Bill O'Brien, like, why is it called this? Or why is this the way? And they're like, oh, 4 years ago, you know, the Cincinnati Bengals, they did this look and we had to get a call that allowed us to buy. You're like, we can't just call this a new play. Like at this point, it's not even the same. Like the intent is different, but that's how offenses go. Kyle used to do the same thing. Like for me, it wasn't as foreign with Kyle because I was with him from the beginning. And then it was weird. This is kind of an interesting little anecdote is like when I went away from him, I was last with him in 2013, and then I was with him again in San Francisco in 2017. So there's a little bit of a break there. And his offense had some of those trees that had grown up, you know? And so everybody does it. It's just about, you know, how intuitive they are when they do it.
That is really interesting. Again, I'm not covering this team for about a decade, and it never really has been put in those terms because of the lineage. That's got to be one of the reasons why it can be difficult to pick up. Logan Paulsen, thanks for making us smarter here, man. Learned a lot about the game, learned a lot about the Patriots offense. Wasn't sure I was going to coming in, but I'm glad I did. I'm glad we had you on. Thanks so much for being with us.
Guys, thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it. You did a great job, man. Really appreciate having me on.
Great conversation there with Logan. Loved having him on the podcast. Feel like I've got a lot smarter today. It might just be me, you know, sort of a low bar in terms of where I'm at foundationally. So there's a lot of room to grow every single day. But with Logan, with Mark, you learn about the quarterback spot. You're learning about the tight end spot. I feel like we covered a lot of bases today. Make sure, again, if you're not already following Logan Paulsen on Instagram, you got to go do it. He's at Logan, LOGAN_Paulsen, PAULSEN 82 on Instagram. He's breaking down all kinds of film there. A lot of great dissections of football concepts that you'll see here in New England, whether it's the Patriots running them or their opponents. There's a lot of this stuff that transfers from one week to the next, from one team to the next. We know it's a copycat league. There are just certain things that all teams will run occasionally, if not more than occasionally. And you can just learn more about how the X's and the O's work just by following Logan Paulsen. So thanks to Logan again. Thanks to Mark Schofield again. And thank you to you all for listening. Please, 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 if you haven't already, rate, comment, subscribe, tell your friends. It really helps out Next Pats. It allows us to be our best selves as a podcast. So we appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next week.